Right, you should get a recording started message. So I want to begin formally by acknowledging that we're meeting on the various lands of the Kulin Nation, who are the custodians of these lands on which we're meeting, and pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge any elders here today. I'd also like to acknowledge that we're meeting on lands that was never ceded, and that the devastatingly vast overrepresentation of First Nations people amongst those experiencing homelessness is a direct and ongoing consequence of colonisation. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. I'd also like to acknowledge those with lived and living experience of homelessness and or family violence, and recognise their strength, resilience and courage. They're suffering the consequences of a structural problem in Australia that no one should be facing in a country as wealthy as ours. So I'd just like to start by taking a few minutes to read some feedback that we've received from consumers. I don't know if that's new information for any of you, but I always find, no matter how many times I read the feedback we receive, that I get goosebumps and find it very helpful. Move on to some generalised feedback and then we'll formally begin the meeting. We're all from the Consumer Participation Working Group, which is a subgroup of the Northern and Western Local Area Service Networks, or LASNs, and we've been collecting feedback for years. And some of the themes we hear in our consumer feedback are loudly and clearly that the experience of homelessness is devastating. That consumers know that Melbourne's experiencing a housing crisis, and when we ask what is the thing we can do to help improve their situation, they say, not surprisingly, provide us with access to affordable and safe housing. In a positive, consumers generally say they feel respected by homelessness service providers, so that's very reassuring. One thing they tell us, which is distressing, is that they're still having to tell their story more often. Many of you will know that the whole homelessness sector was reformed about 13 years ago to try and make it easier to navigate for consumers and to reduce the need for them to repeat information about their situation to multiple services. So it is distressing to hear they still are having to do that. Something else they tell us loud and clear is that the emergency accommodation that we can access is generally inappropriate and harmful. And we've received incredibly powerful feedback about that. When we ask consumers what are their main reasons for seeking homelessness support, one thing that surprised us is many of them said someone to talk to about my problems. And I find that so important because particularly in this climate, we often can't meet consumers' primary needs, which are for housing and an adequate income. It's really important to know that just by listening and walking beside them, we're meeting a huge need already. And I think that's very powerful. And after the pandemic, we asked how consumers would like us to communicate with them. We learned so many new tools during the pandemic, and which ones should we continue with? And different consumers reported that we should continue with different tools, and they had different preferences. So some consumers said, I have anxiety, so I really need to see someone face to face. And someone else said, I have anxiety, so it's wonderful to be able to ring someone on the phone. So all of these bits of information help inform us about the impact of our service system and our service responses. So we're going to hear now from Sarah about her journey to this working group. Thanks, Sarah.
Sarah. So I guess I just wanted to kind of share why I joined the group and what I've gotten out of it, hoping that you will get as involved along the way. So I've been a member for a couple of years now, not quite as long as Sarah and Hallamay, but a few years. So initially I joined the group because my manager asked me to. So I thought, yeah, consumer feedback is important. I'll see what it's about. So the first year I just kind of sat back and listened, wrapped my head around it. And it probably wasn't until at the end of the year when I read Sarah's report of all the responses that I really was able to see the potential this survey has if we get the numbers. And the numbers has always been such a huge issue. Even though we've tried so many different ways to get workers, to get the consumers to participate, which is why we're here today. I know myself, until I joined this group, although I did do the survey with clients, it was more so because my manager kept reminding me, and it was just going to the back of the head and, yeah, just getting lost. But we all know that the system is broken and things need to change. But we can all say that, but we need stuff like this to be able to use for advocacy, to be able to make a change for the clients. This survey, I know the survey I've ended up actually even using as a tool for service delivery as well. I'm sure we're not the only service that is trying to be creative to get clients in our office, engaged, comfortable, and wanting to come back. So all the clients we've got to complete the survey have engaged well, and we've actually also been able to pull things out of the survey to work with the clients with their case plans as well. It's also been really good to provide a safe space for the clients to let out their frustrations about their time through the homelessness system, and kind of a safe space too to acknowledge together that things need to change. And I know Sarah before shared some of the feedback and quotes from some of the clients, and I know the biggest one I got from last year was that how important having someone to listen was for them, because as a case manager, I'm often left questioning, are we making a difference and are we helpful with such limited housing around? And you can very easily forget how important it is to listen. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was great. Does anyone have any questions of Sarah? Sarah's a very passionate member of the working group, so it's fantastic having her.
All right, this is my bit. As both Sarah's mentioned, I might just say Sarah L, Sarah W. I'm not sure how long I've been on the Consumer Participation Working Group, but very similar to Sarah, and I'm sure Sarah L as well, and just ensuring that this is why we're here. We're at service delivery. We're here to make a difference to consumers. I have through my profession, I don't do direct service, but my role is to work with practitioners to work with children. So my passion area and interest area is around ensuring that children are heard, seen, validated. So when I was seeing this group and also just thought this is an opportunity to voice children as well. So that's why I'm on this working group. And just like Sarah, I have goosebumps every time I read the quotes, which there are some on this PowerPoint as well. So in terms of who we are, Sarah Lang sort of did explain, we're the three of us are part of the Consumer Participation Working Group, and there's also a few lived experience participants as well, and the Northern Networkers. So it's just amazing in terms of the group that we have and how the experience and knowledge together is just, I think, a very empowering group. I think it's been running for, Sarah will correct me, but it's a working group shared by the Northern and Western local area service networks, which we might use the acronym LASNs, I think operating about 14 years. Just a bit of a background in terms of the intro is that the homelessness sector sort of had a bit of a reorganisation to work as a coordinated service system. And what it actually means is how do we actually do this to ensure that we're having that it's beneficial for consumers. And how do we do that? We thought the surveys asking exactly what Sarah said in terms of asking consumers what it is that we can do or not doing in terms of meeting their needs or not meeting their needs. So some of the aims around this was like, how do you access the coordinated service system? Is it meeting your needs? How do we improve and respond to those needs through the system? And the survey is the best way to get that sort of qualitative data. And like Sarah said, the advocacy, the quotes and what comes out of it is such an important tool. I use the quotes in terms of my training sessions. I found it very powerful in terms of having actually someone, reading their quotes in terms of what they've experienced. What we just wanted to ask the group is just expanding on that. So why do we seek consumer feedback and how do we use it? Just if there's any ideas that people want to sort of throw around in terms of why this is important, this work is important.
Are there any thoughts in the group? I can tell you why it's important for me. I mean, I feel very insecure as a worker if I don't know how I'm performing, how my work's coming across. And actually, when we do direct service, the only people who can tell us that are consumers. So that's one huge issue for me. The other is that I used to see my role as a support worker to support people to use what agency they have themselves. So rather than me doing things for them, helping them build the confidence or the skills to do things for themselves. And so any opportunity I could find to encourage consumers to take action for themselves, I would. And I think giving their feedback, because they're the experts, is one action they can take to help us improve our individual responses and our service system responses.
Yeah, following on from Sarah too, it is we're working with individuals too. So generally everyone has a preferred way of how someone can support them too. So obviously through this, you're obviously going to be able to work with clients a lot better.
Following through that one is, and we know everyone's got unique experiences, whether it's a child within that family unit or the adult. But like Sarah said, it's really about, consumers have said, it's really about validating and hearing them. And this is, I think, a really good opportunity in terms of seeing or them seeing them that they're actually being listened to and heard in terms of what's actually happening for them. And we've had consumers say, you know, for example, you know, you've done a great job with me around my housing and homeless, but no one's asking me about how my children are travelling or what's happening with my children. I think these are the sort of opportunities that we can actually explore that and hear them and say we're going to use it as an advocacy tool. It's not just going to sit on a shelf.
One of the prime reasons for this meeting is, as Sarah said, we're always trying to find new ways to promote the consumer survey because, you know, as workers, you're very busy. There are a lot of demands on your time and on the time of your consumers. So we've called this meeting to see if we can get one person in every LASN agency to wrap their heads around the survey and then promote it in their service. So we'll talk more about what that entails later. And because we will be shortly launching the consumer survey for this year, and we'll be asking your opinion about strategies to do that better too.
Yeah.
Yeah, following on with the why, we've kind of covered that a little bit. But obviously the biggest thing from it is we can use this for advocacy, but we can only do that if we get the numbers together. Because I think majority of the years there hasn't been over 100. And you think of all the consumers having access to homelessness support, we should be getting so many more than that. Our target every year had been 1,000. We took the target off this year because it's open all year, so we're hoping we're going to get lots. But yeah, we should be getting more than that. But yeah.
Halame's given you some of the background, but we started this working group when the LASNs were first formed, when we were told to create a coordinated service system. So we're all meant to run as a coordinated service system that helps consumers move through the system rather than having to navigate the system ourselves. So we made all these changes, and then we said, well, how do we know if these changes have had the desired effect? And someone quite a genius said, well, only the consumers can tell us. So every year since 2011, we've been running this joint survey. So this joint survey is about how our coordinated system works. You'll probably all run your own individual agency feedback processes, but this one is at the systems level. How does the homelessness system in Melbourne's North and West work? And I should say, actually, I use the term consumers. It's not one I really love. And we have had many debates in the working group about what term to use, clients, service users. Many years ago, Council to Homeless Persons ran a focus group, and the consumers in that group said they preferred to be referred to as consumers. But we've heard from lived experience participants more recently that that's not their preferred term, but we haven't had a formal process to work that out. So if you have any ideas, let us know along the way. Or if you want to ask consumers who participate in the survey what they prefer. We do use the term, obviously, people with lived and living experience of homelessness, but for the purposes of the survey, we're specifically looking at those with lived experience of homelessness who have approached the homelessness system and who we've supported. So it's a subgroup of that group.
All right. So I'll just get you to have a look at some of the surveys, the titles of the surveys that we have completed today. So I think roughly we've had about 2,000 responses collectively from those surveys. And as we've all mentioned, the three of us, in terms of this is a big opportunity for us to draw on feedback from consumers from the surveys in ways that we can improve the homelessness, housing and homelessness system. We've used the quotes and submissions. I know Sarah, through our LASNs, in terms of any inquiries, submissions, the quotes are very powerful and are used. I know I use them as well. It's guided our advocacy group as well in terms of what's come out of the consumer surveys. just to touch on, maybe you're familiar or heard of, if not, maybe worthwhile having a look, the Crisis and Crisis report that the networkers have released. I think it was Crisis 1 or Crisis 2, I'm not sure, 2 reports, and that was highlighting, again, through the surveys as well, in terms of the chronic crisis we had in terms of accommodation options for consumers. What else does the consumer? It provides, it's a tool for training. There's some policies that have been driven from these surveys as well. If I remember correctly, and I've just got a foggy head, the pets policy, I think, is one. Advocacy for the e-referral. So there's lots of ways that we've actually incorporated the surveys and what's come out of them in terms of our service delivery and our practice, and that's what it is. It's how we can actually hear and meet the needs of consumers in the service system. Have I missed anything, Sarah?
No, that's great. Thank
Cool.
you for that, Helen. Something we're really aware of in the working group is the need for a feedback loop. There's no reason for people to participate in any survey, workers or consumers, if they don't know how the information is going to be used and that it actually is used. It's very difficult for us to work out how to provide feedback to the people who participate in our consumer surveys, because often their support period's ended by the time that we release the findings of the survey. So every year we develop a poster that we ask you to put up in your services, and the poster outlines what feedback we were given by consumers and what we've done in response. So we haven't yet developed this year's poster, but when we do, it'd be fantastic if you put it up and draw consumers' attention to it. But also we publish on our website a report of the consumer survey findings that you and consumers can access. So it's also worth letting them know that that information's there if they want to, but also primarily let them know some of the things Hallamay has said, that we use this feedback routinely in advocacy and submissions to government, and we always put that front and centre in our submissions. We write to MPs, we write to the department, and we always include the consumer feedback about the service system for good and bad.
So this brings us to this year's survey. So this year we're taking a very different approach. And this approach came from last year. We did a survey asking practitioners, what can we do to support you guys to get the surveys done? And they came back with wanting a longer window and a shorter survey. So that's what we've created. So the survey has just 5 questions, so it doesn't take very long, and it will be open all year. I have to admit, I was very nervous about the new approach because I was very scared it might get lost, because it was already getting lost even with the 1-month window, which is why we've introduced the champions to try and keep on board. And I do have to say too, I have trialled the survey with clients, and have to say, because it is so short, the responses have been much longer, and was able to pull so much out of it because they are just very direct, simple questions. So yeah, we'll also be running another short survey in Homelessness Week. Hopefully, if this does go the way we hope and the years roll on, you can, more trends that are coming up, you could focus that Homelessness Week survey on. So basically we're hoping that any client that you guys find appropriate to do the survey on can complete it.
Thank you, Sarah.
So your role as survey champions. So obviously, as I've just said too, we've decided to introduce this role. So each survey to make sure the survey doesn't get lost within each service. and to keep the momentum going within the service. We do find too, if someone's a member of the working group, it kind of makes sure that the survey is in the workplace. So hopefully doing this, you don't have to commit to all the work that we do, but can hopefully keep the energy going within the service. So we'd ask you to pop posters up, print out the copies needed for the survey and the consent form and information sheet. Make sure your staff all know at your survey that it's going on, and help the staff become familiar with the survey. Hoping that you also can keep a rough idea of a tally of how many you've done, so we can check in with you guys to see how it's going. And any feedback. Obviously, this is new. This may not work. So honesty is important. If your team isn't doing it, it's okay to say that just so we know, because then obviously this approach doesn't work and we can look at other options. And then if you can provide an update to your LASN member so that it can be discussed at the LASN meetings, and to send any paper copy surveys to Sarah. The other option is to, I know some of us, even if you don't want to send it over, you can just input it into SurveyMonkey. Oh, we're not using SurveyMonkey this year. But if you pop it through, it's a 5-minute survey, so it's not too long.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about that, about the role we're suggesting for all of you? So there are a few other things we're doing to try and support you in the survey. We're running 2 information sessions for any staff. They're only half an hour long and they're online. I've sent the invitations to your LASN members, so feel free to send them on or email me and I can add people to the electronic invitation. Consumer Participation Working Group members would love to come to your staff meetings and provide this very brief overview in your team meetings, so please feel free to get in touch if that's useful. We have an agency guide that you can print out and give to all your colleagues. You can contact me anytime with questions, and when I send out the slides, I'll you'll have my email address. You're welcome to contact other working group members at any point as well. And something we wanted to ask all of you is, the survey is going to be open for a year. Would it be useful to have check-in meetings with all of you? It would be, of course, useful to us to see if this approach is working and to get some sort of live information about things we could be tweaking. But would it be useful to you, or would it be an impost?
I think check-ins would be good.
Check-in would be good. Thanks, Kelly. Anybody else?
I think a check-in would be good, Sarah, just to keep us keep motivated with sending out the surveys as well.
Right. What about quarterly work, do you think? Would that be of every 3 months? Would that be useful or too much?
It might be worth doing one sooner in the initial stages to iron out any issues, and then I think quarterly would be great. Maybe one after the first month.
Yeah,
that's a very good idea, and thank you. Sorry, I spoke over someone. Who was that?
I was just agreeing with that was what I was thinking as well. Just so if there's any, if we're running into any barriers, we can kind of see what other people are doing and see if we can kind of get over those. So. Oh,
brilliant! All right. Well, I might send you all out some dates for a month after the survey opens, and just let me know, you know, which ones work, and we'll pick the date that works for most people. That's great. Thank you.
All right. So this is my slide. Some of this has sort of been covered through Sarah and Sarah. I'll just get you to read that in terms of what the survey is focusing on. But like Sarah said, this is a new approach. And just wanted to add to that, that when we say new approach, it's because we've actually asked practitioners in terms of what's working, what's not. So this is why we've sort of come up with, we will listen to, and I think those meetings will be very important in the terms of if having it open for 1 year doesn't work, or going back to 3 months or 1 month or what have you. Hence why the new approach. So we're really, really keen to hear in terms of what is working, because it's the fact that exactly what Sarah said, you know, there's a lot going on in terms of the work that you guys are doing. So we don't want to make it more of an impact. Like it's got to work for you as well. So please, yeah, just let us know, give us that feedback. But again, as Sarah said, so it's open for a whole year. I think it starts, I shouldn't say, I think I should know, it starts on 16th of April and right up until the 15th of 2026 next year, as it's popping up there. So it's the how is over the year. You've got your link. You've got the QR code option, in-person, phone, whatever works for the consumer and yourself. There's a paper form, exactly how Sarah said, in terms of how you can return all of that. And yeah, hopefully that whole year would mean that we will have more. The more responses we have is going to mean that we have more advocacy tools, I suppose, that we've heard more consumers in terms of what it is that needs to happen in the homelessness service system. What are we getting wrong? What are we getting right? What needs to improve? So yeah, and then what we'll do with that is we'll collate that. We collate that as the working group, and then we take them back. Sarah takes them to the west, and the Northern Network will take them to the north, and then we inform our improvements. We come up with improvements for the LASNs as well. So there's a bit of a process after the survey as well in terms of what we do.
Thank you, Hannah. And I'm sorry I jumped. I thought the next slide was the dates, but it wasn't. So now we have the dates. We're actually launching on Youth Homelessness Matters Day, which is one way to remember. And on the left is a picture of the poster you'll all be receiving at LASN meetings. We've just got to put in the updated QR code. There are 2 versions of that poster, so you'll be receiving that. So, beg your pardon. So that's the what, and now we're interested in your feedback about how you can assist, how we can help you. How do you think we can best engage with busy workers? What will make the survey meaningful for workers, and what do you think some of the barriers might be?
I think one of the barriers is probably going to be speaking for our area is a very high population of people of cold backgrounds. So for those that don't have or don't know how to access an interpreter, or maybe their organisation doesn't already have a way to do that, I just if you're going to be championing this and you know that you've got an interpreter service that you can use, that's awesome. If you're not sure, it might be worth asking and just seeing if you already have, and then that way we can try and find a solution if not possible. While I'm talking, I'll just keep going. I mean, it's different for me based on my role. I'm going to try and book out some time in my calendar each week to try and get the ball rolling, and spend a bit of time out in the reception, just kind of making sure people are seeing the posters, see if we can get some work, get some numbers up through that way. And then, but it's always going to be hard. Like everybody I know in the sector is constantly busy. That's my biggest concern, is finding people that are going to have time to spare.
Yeah, thanks for Cass. I agree. And it is particularly difficult for the access points because the contact is so short, and so there's so much to cover. That's one place we're hoping the posters can help, that people might be interested if they're sitting in a waiting room to scan the QR code themselves. And lots of services do have waiting rooms, so someone on reception could point out the poster and the QR code. Erin.
I think one of the challenges is, like we mentioned it at the last sort of LASN meeting, is the everyone does a survey almost every month about something, and maybe just that future planning so that, you know, organisations' needs are being met too with some of the questions and feedback. And maybe we can work towards having one survey that we can get information relevant to our organisation from the feedback and still maintain the anonymity of the respondents, but also so that it feeds into what the needs of the LASN are. And maybe as a future thing, it just reduces the amount of those exit surveys that are happening with clients.
Yes, thanks, Erin. That's true.
Sounds like you, Erin, need to join the working group.
Good point. And one thing I should have said is when we produce the report of the survey, we always, it's de-identified for consumers, obviously, but we also de-identify the services because we're interested in systems information. If a consumer's given their worker name or their service name, we always take that out of the report before we show it to anyone. So that's, yeah, that's
because
really
it is with this survey too. I know we do them within our service as well, and the feedback's always, yeah, you're great, you're awesome, you're doing a good job, and you know that's not the case. Whereas generally when you're doing this, other stuff comes out where you know that they're probably talking about you, but because it's not our survey, they're a lot more free to speak as well.
Yeah. One thing people sometimes say is that clients are in crisis and, you know, they don't want to think about something like a survey, and that's certainly true for many. But we did a focus group years ago asking consumers about it, and they said, if telling my story helps someone else, then I want to do it. That at a time people feel really disempowered and often quite hopeless, there is something positive they can do to make change for their future selves, but also for other people. Nahal?
Hi.
Mm.
I have a question. Our IAP team, we're a statewide service. So I guess my question is, do you want us to only ask the consumers who live in the northern regions to participate in answering the survey questions, or do you want us to ask all the women that we work with to participate?
That is a very good question. Can I talk to the working group and get back to you? My
Yep,
guess would
thank
be
you.
anyone who's had any contact with the service system in the north or the west would be
Okay.
ideal, but that might be a big stretch for your workers. So, you know, perspective of anyone is helpful. But yes, ideally those who've had contact with our systems in the north or the west.
Yeah.
Coming through to Sarah. Is there any chance to get some paper copies of the survey in some key languages?
Yes, that's a good question. I can look at the cost of that. We're very tight budget in both the Northern and Western networks at the moment, unfortunately, because we then have to get the responses translated unless the interpreter's on site and can physically write the responses in English. But I'll certainly look into that. I think that's a very good suggestion. Georgina?
Hi, I'm from Hope Street. Just wondering also, for a lot of the young people that come through a few of our services, particularly our refuges, some are like regular kind of service users, and others it may be their first time into the homelessness kind of sector or field for them. So I just think it will be interesting. It's not really a question, it's more a thought of mine, but you know, it will be kind of interesting to see the differences in the responses because of that. And the other part of it that I'm thinking also is very much their ages too, because so we can get them, you know, from 16 all the way to sort of 25, 26. So you know, obviously that those age groups shows that they've had very different experiences and links within the homelessness sector, and even maybe for some of the younger ones as well, or for any age group, they may have also had a very entrenched history, whether it be through their own experience of being homeless when they were a child, like, you know, right through. I mean, it will just be an interesting sort of snapshot to see whether where all of their experiences sort of lay.
Absolutely. And you've raised one thing that's very difficult for the working group. We get so greedy for information that every time we start exploring something, we want more and more information.
Yeah,
and
well, that's
true. We want more information about how long someone's been homeless and how many services have contacted and so on. And this time we've tried very hard to really limit the questions. But one good thing is at the back end of the system, we can filter the information by things like age groups. So there are a series of demographic questions. And when we have capacity, we often look at different responses by age or gender or ability.
Sure.
So that helps us draw some conclusions. Yeah.
Following that too, I know one of the previous years there was questions asked about rooming houses and stuff, and I work with young people as well. And it was very interesting to see the amount of young people that were in rooming houses through that or had an experience with rooming houses. Because many years ago they wouldn't have, but now the options are so slim that that's something that's obviously coming out more. So there's so much the surveys do show.
Yeah.
And it is, very interesting. But it is, we need the numbers to actually be able to use it in the future.
Of course. And even with that, sorry, just, I mean, Sarah, I agree. Like, when I first sort of started, there were very few of our young people that would have been in the rooming house kind of, having had experiences there. Whereas now, unfortunately, there's a higher majority. But equally, I think what I see a lot is also the use of motels a lot more for some younger, participants as well, like that maybe wouldn't have necessarily gone through that kind of sector before either.
Yeah, and it's sad but useful to get that information over time, isn't it? And we found for the first years we were running the survey, it was very much about what's your experience of the service system. And we were getting very similar responses each year. So then we started to move to surveys that really explored particular issues in depth. And the big one was the emergency accommodation. And we got such powerful feedback from that. But also we were able to ask consumers what we should advocate for. So often when we say to workers, we know that the hotels, motels, rooming houses we can access are generally inappropriate, often not safe. What should we be advocating for? And often workers' first instinct is we need more refuges, we need more Osram houses and Flagstaff. So we actually ask consumers, what should we be advocating for? Would you rather a large congregate setting with workers there to support you 24 hours a day? Or do you want your own lockable space, even if it's small? And 85% said they wanted their own lockable space, even if it was small. And so that's what we've advocated for ever since. We've done a lot of work about demountables and other options, because we can clearly say to policymakers what consumers want is somewhere that's lockable, where they're safe, that they can keep it clean. Really basic asks, but we could genuinely go forward in that advocacy knowing that we had the perspective of consumers behind us. So it is really useful to be able to tell consumers, I think, who are busy and whose current situation might be awful, that we really are using this information to try and advocate for a better future and the type of housing they need and the type of responses they need. Are there any other barriers you can think of, or anything you can think that we can provide that would help you and your colleagues in relation to the survey?
Sarah, my name is Millet, by the way. I work for the Housing for the Age Action Group, and our age group is 50 and over people. And we also, more than 50% of our service users are from COLT background. As we know that all the people underrepresented at access points, they usually contact our organizations that they're familiar with, whether it's migrant resource centers or housing services for older people. Will there be any questions that's going to sort of identify the age group of those older people 50 plus who are not accessing the access point?
Yes, definitely. This is an age question. It's lovely to see you, Melis.
Yeah.
And we can filter all the answers by age. So we can pull out just the responses from people over 50, for instance, and see how they vary. The LASN was talking last week about how many more older people we're seeing in the service system. So there's some talk about doing some specific advocacy on the needs of older people and also on younger people. So being able to filter the responses to the survey by age is so helpful. Keep thinking about barriers and how we can support you. There'll be time at the end to give us some more ideas if you think of them, or pop them in the chat too, would be very useful.
Okay, so I'll just get you to have a read of that slide, but I've just added a bit of my points as well. So what we're hoping is that you can offer consumers the opportunity to take part in the survey by explaining that the homeless service system is for consumers, and each year it's about improving the service delivery. And the surveys are anonymous. A key point, the surveys are anonymous, so the information is going to be de-identified. That you will identify the consumers that are best placed to comment on how effective and appropriate for the homelessness service responses are, and that the consumers are experts in this. So we're guided by them, we don't guide them. It's very important that consumers are made aware of the fact that we value their expertise, even if they don't feel up to participating in the survey. Really, really important. This is participation is voluntary, so we're not forcing any consumers to take part in this. And it's important that if they don't want to take part in it, that we actually say we value that as well, and that they're not compelled to participate. And must be reassured that even if they haven't taken part in this survey, it's not going to impact your relationship with them or the service delivery they get in the agency. As it says, and keep in mind, practitioners should be very mindful to assess the current emotional state of their consumers before asking to participate. So you're better placed in terms of if you think that, yep, this would be a consumer or young person that I can actually ask, actually where they're at now, etc. Probably not best place to do it. Hopefully, being open for 12 months, it might mean that things have changed for that person as well, that they may be able to consumer as well, that they may be able to participate later on. What else? Yeah, so we're just leaving that judgment or that call with you guys. And if additional support is required, there is, as Sarah mentioned, there's an agency guide, and there's some service numbers there in terms of telephone counselling or support service available that you can provide the consumer. Yeah, just keeping that in mind.
Thank you, Helen May. So quick information about this year's actual survey. So we always start with the same introduction and consent questions. And then we have our 5 key questions. I'll show you the survey. They're going to look like more questions, but that's because we've broken one down, 2 up to make it easier to answer. And then the 5 demographic questions at the end. So I'll give you a quick look at what the survey looks like. Can you see that? So we're now using forms. There's a bit of an introduction to the survey and how long it will take to fill in. We think it will take 5 to 10 minutes. Then the consent questions, which are about, do you require an interpreter? What's your main language? Have you read or has your worker read the participant information consent form? So we'll give you copies of that. And have you had a chance to ask your worker questions about the survey? They're also welcome to ring me for more information. And then it asks, are they happy to continue with the survey? And if they say yes, then that's their consent given. So the questions are about your experience of the homelessness service system. And this is one we've broken into multiple questions. So it looks like a lot, But what we're actually asking consumers in these sections is to click as many stars as is relevant to the question. So we're asking what type of homelessness support is important to you, with 5 stars being the most important and 1 star being the least important. So consumers can go through this list. On the paper version, they can just colour in the stars or put a ring around how many stars are relevant. All these types of assistance we can provide. There's some that might be not important at all, and then they don't need to tick on any stars. So it's sadly quite a long list, but Sarah's worked through it with clients and they found that that process was very quick. Then a text answer. We want to know what contact with the homelessness system has been helpful or unhelpful and why. Consumers can write as much or as little as they want there. What things can homelessness services do better? And then we're seeing amongst consumers an increase in mental health issues, that consumers are reporting that they're homeless for longer and so their mental health is declining. So we want to ask a question about how we can support consumers and their mental health better. Then we have the same 5-star system for how consumers would like to be in contact with the homelessness service system, particularly as we're not open 24 hours. And previously, consumers have said, you know, they would like to be able to contact homelessness services after hours. So with our limited funding, we're trying to find creative ways of providing more access to more responses after hours. So again, it's the same star system. They just tick how many stars are relevant about different ways of being in contact with us. And then we have the standard demographic questions: age, living arrangement, which country a consumer was born in, the First Nation status, gender, whether or not they're experiencing any disabilities or impairments, and whether they identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, asexual, or questioning. And then that's the end of the survey. So I'll just go back to the slides. We're nearly there.
Does anyone have any questions? Survey itself, it's pretty simple, not very long at all. Cass?
It's just a double, sorry. It's
That's
just a
okay.
double time when you use the interpreters to complete
Yeah.
this survey. Yeah.
Yes.
I was just thinking, last year we had a number that was kind of a goal. Do we have a goal this year?
We weren't sure because it's open for a year. Last year, we were asking that every worker try and find one consumer to participate. Because this is open all year, we'd love you to be able to ask every consumer you work with, particularly for support services. If you're working with people for 2 weeks or 9 months or 3 years, there's lots of opportunities then to talk to them about the survey. We'll also have a handout you can give consumers in case they want to just do the survey in their own time when you're not around. Does anyone have a good suggestion for a goal? We could aim for our 1,000 again.
I think that's the whole point of creating this kind of group as well, and the champions, is that if we are checking into the feedback is so important of what's working and what's not, so we know how to make this work, whether it's this year or next year, so we can keep building on it and get more than 100 responses.
Thank you. We've talked about a kit of information you'll get, and I expect that we'll hand these out at the next LASN meeting. So you'll get 2 posters to display, but also they'll be on the website. You can print out more posters if you have multiple places to display them. There's the agency guide, which runs through the worker's role in the survey. There's the participant information and consent form, which is a more plain English information about the survey. You'll get a
On my
PDF
desk.
paper copy of that, and then
Thank you.
we'll just
Appreciate it. Bye.
Cass, you're not on mute.
Oh, sorry.
no problem. And then we will be developing a feedback poster about what we've done in response to last year's survey. So you can have that to display beside the poster about this year. So have you had time to think about anything else that would help you in this? Any strategies for us? Any questions? Well, bang on to. Here's my email address, so feel free to send them through. Encourage your colleagues to attend the 2 information sessions, and let us know if you'd like us to hold more or hold it just in your service during a team meeting. And thank you so much for your time. It's been great to see you all and great to get your feedback.
Thank
Yeah,
you so much.
thanks everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Great to see you all.
See ya.
Thanks, bye.
Sarah and Hallamay, have you got a minute? Yes. Just kicked Andrew out.
Well, there you go.
Well, we've done it. You
It
two are
took a
very
while
good.
to get people to speak, but they got there in the end, and there were more than we've seen before doing just a standard info session.
Yes.
So
That's good, isn't it? Oh, hang on. I'm just going to stop the record. I don't know if it did record. Oh.